Johnny Crowder is a musician and mental health advocate. He plays in a new metal hardcore band called Prison, but I personally know him from his time back in Dark Sermon, which is more of a deathcore band from back in the day. He is the founder of mental health support program Cope Notes and is also a public speaker on the matter. These are all things that we get into throughout this interview, but real quick, if you want to be a part of these conversations while they are happening live, we are live on Twitch twice a week. I say we because I'm normally streaming with my co-host Yan, who unfortunately wasn't able to make it to this particular stream. But we also have an amazing Discord community, kind of revolves around all things life, but mostly heavy music. If any of those things are things you might be interested in, I will have links to all of those down below, as well as links towards all of Johnny's projects. With that being said, this is my conversation with Johnny Crowder. Johnny Crowder, what's going on?
Dude, I had to grab this, so I don't know if people can see, but this is my old laminate from, oh yes, I'm so glad you got yours. How cool is that? Yeah, I have this, this corkboard that I'm sure every touring musician has with like all of their laminates on it, and I'm missing 3 that I still need to like recreate somehow, but I did grab this and like, oh, I'm so glad you have yours too.
I had lost this one for the longest time. I don't know why. I think like I moved multiple apartments, lost it somewhere. It was with some other stuff, and I randomly stumbled upon it actually not that long ago, and I was like, no fucking way. And there's actually some stuff we can talk about this directly, because did I ever tell you I quit my job to do this run?
This was short. That's a short run to quit your job for.
Yes, sir.
Holy cow.
Okay, so originally, it's with Igian, and they weren't a part of this in the end, so they dropped. This was also supposed to be like a 2-week run, or like week and a half run or something like that, but ended up getting cut down to 3 days.
That's rough. I remember that there were some issues, but I must have mentally blocked out to protect myself. Because I think they couldn't get across the border, so we did American dates with them. With somebody else, I think The World We Knew.
Yeah,
and
I was looking that up. Yeah, it was like one of their anniversary tours or something, or their final tour, was it not?
Yes, it was their farewell tour.
Yeah.
That's right. Igian, honestly. Wait, did you get to see them live?
I then booked a full Canada tour for/with them.
Okay,
like a year or two later. Okay, so here's the funny thing. If we go back to that kind of era, like the meta back then, because it wasn't really MySpace anymore, we were like on the other side of it, it was all on Facebook, but like the meta was commenting on, you know, like tagging the other band, and kind of like it could be like a random band, but like 2 bands that you kind of like interact with semi regularly, and kind of just tag them and say something stupid. And for whatever reason, that would the fact that the fans of both bands would see that the 2 bands were interacting, people would kind of go nuts on that sort of thing. And dude, I was doing that with you guys, but I was also doing it with Igian. And this is before we had ever like actually talked. This is before we actually played shows together. And it ultimately kind of led to a bunch of, for me personally, I guess, to some opportunities, like ending up getting onto this tour, and then further down the line talking more with Igian and actually doing a full Canadian run with them and stuff like that. But it was all kind of based on like kind of really basic banter on the internet that was really just made for impressions. It was like the impression farming of the day.
I forgot that there was a time when you could post on a band's Facebook wall.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I don't believe you can do that.
No, that's it.
But before, people would be like Despised Icon would comment on Beneath the Massacre, like kissy face. And then all these kids would be like, no way. Are you guys going to tour together? Are you guys going to do a collab?
And it was kind of like, I guess, just from an impression standpoint, I just think like the fans of both different bands would see that come up on their feeds and stuff. And I think people really latched on to the fact that not a single band that they enjoy, but two bands that they enjoy, they kind of feel like they're like in on the secret kind of thing. Like, oh, like I'm a fan of these two bands, and these two bands are like kind of like displaying that they're friends, even though for the most part, like you say, Beneath the Massacre and Despised Icon, they're actually real life friends. But for like a band like mine and yours, we were just, you know, I thought you guys made cool music, but we didn't know each other. We weren't actually friends, you know, but it did translate into like real world opportunities in the end, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I remember my first impression to you guys was that music video where the dude from Beneath the Massacre kicks the tricycle.
Yeah.
And it's the most iconic,
as dude, was for a lot of people. Yeah.
Dude, that is the most beast thing I've seen in a music video. Because doesn't he like kick down a door or something? Or like
he
punch through a wall?
Kind of like goes through a wall, and I mean, I've talked about this before, but like the TLDR is kind of like we made a fake door, and it was basically just like a few planks, and we put like a bunch of dust on it, and like we just made something that he'd be able to burst through really easily. But the way that it's shot doesn't, like, it completely covers it up because the camera is really like parallel to the wall, so you can't really see if there's actually a door or if the wall is actually sick. Full or not. And how it comes out is just like a bunch of shit exploding on the other side. So it really does look like he's like plowing through a fucking wall, which is like, and the thing with that shot is we did it for real, like him going through the wall once.
Yeah,
that was a one take. Yeah, we were just like, nah, like that. It was such bullshit to like set up that fake kind of door, and like we practiced it a few times. He actually kicked the tricycle like a few times, so like probably hurt himself a few times before actually doing it. And then the take that we were like, okay, yeah, let's do it. He like fully went for the tricycle and fully went for the door. And thankfully, like the guys that were doing the camera work, they nailed it. They got the shot, because that normally would have been the thing that would have screwed the whole shot up more than anything else, I think. But somehow they made it work.
So dope.
Yeah. We, so that tour, that run that we ended up doing was only 3 dates, but we were expecting it to be longer, which is why I ended up quitting my job. Because I asked my job, I was like, I would be gone for a week and a half, 2 weeks or whatever. And they were like, no, we can't allow that to you. And it was like a fucking Home Depot type job, you know, like I was working in the back store, like moving boxes. It wasn't like, I wasn't indispensable. It was like purely on principle. Like, no, these are the rules here. We can't give you some time off. Even though I had been there for a while, they were the employee they wanted to move up into management and do all these things. And I said, you know what, guys, you guys won't allow me to leave for a week and a half. Fuck it, I'm leaving. But then it turned out to be 3 days. And I found out later, but I was still like, nah, fuck these guys. I guess I was too cocky back then. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna beg for my job back. Fuck it. But so I always kind of remember as like, you know, I'm like leaving for a 3-show run and I quit my job I kind of felt ridiculous in the end. But I'm glad I did it. It was fun. I'm on to bigger and better things. But that run was so fun, dude.
Yeah, I also quit. Now that I think about it, I worked at Chipotle in the early Dark Sermon days, and I quit because we were offered either Barge to Hell or 70,000 Tons of Metal. I can't remember which one. We did
last
first.
Minute, right?
Yeah, and we were going to be gone 5 days, I think, in total. And I told my boss, like, I'm going to get to play on a cruise ship with Behemoth.
You're living out your dream. Yeah.
Dude, I have to go do this. And they were like, absolutely not. You're supposed to work next week. And I was like, am I going to say no to playing a death metal cruise so that I can roll burritos? And I was talking to my manager, like, picture being me, like a kid who all I've ever wanted my whole life was to be a rock star. Ever since I was a little kid, I'm 3 years old. Like, I want to be a rock star. And now I get to play on a cruise ship with Behemoth. And you're going to tell me that I need to stay here.
Stay home.
And
stay home and do burritos. Yeah.
like, I have to leave. And she was like, if you accept this tour, you're quitting basically because I'm firing you. Like you won't be able to come back. And I was like, but you get it kind of. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I do. Like, this is a really unique experience. So I quit. And then all my coworkers were like, oh, is it some super long tour? And I'm like, no, I'm playing 2 45-minute sets across 5 days. And that's what I'm quitting
you're gone for 5 days, but you're total playing an hour and a half. Like,
yeah, it was so worth it though.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like that's like one of those, especially like those cruises and stuff like that. I feel like those are almost, I mean, you get to a point, maybe you do more of those and stuff like that, but that's such like a dream. You know, you ask people what their dream kind of festival or thing would be, and I think a lot of people would tell you like those cruises are like, that's it, you know?
Dude, it was extraordinary. It was an awesome experience. And also, it wasn't the type of job that I'm like, oh no, I'll never be able to work at a Chipotle again. Like, dude, there's plenty of Chipotles. If I really need to come back to work at a Chipotle, there are other ones. But fortunately, I didn't have to.
Yeah, I was. That was my ultimate fallback plan was Tim Hortons. It was always Tim Hortons because I had worked just enough of it, and they were always down bad on staff. I was like, if this one doesn't work out, another one's gonna work out in the end. I don't care. Yeah. I would to my own fault would quit for the stupidest reasons. Like I went out drinking last night and I'm not showing up for my shift, but I would be so careless about it because I always knew there definitely was another opportunity on the other end. It was chill. I wasn't gonna starve or not pay rent at the end of the day. It was cool. Yeah. So for like a cruise ship, hell nah. Like I'm gone. Like. It's crazy how they don't have latitude, though, you know, for those sort of things. I mean, ultimately, you probably would have quit a month or two later from like actually getting a long tour offered or something like that. But for such a menial amount of time, it's like, I don't know, like you said, like she understands it from a human perspective. It's like, no, we gotta be fair, I guess. I kind of get it, but it's kind of weird.
No, I look at my life as like a series of things not working out the way I wanted, and then that being a blessing. Like the only reason I'm doing prison now is because nobody else wanted to continue doing Dark Sermon. So if I had it my way, I'd never even have my band that I have now. I'd never write these songs. So it's actually good. Right. Like I'm glad Chipotle fired me. I'm glad, as difficult as it is for me to say, I'm glad Dark Sermon broke up because all of these things that happened the exact opposite of the way I wanted them to. Like I wanted to be 30 years with Dark Sermon. I wanted to be this huge iconic black metal or death metal band. And because it didn't work out, I was forced to try something else. And I'm grateful for that.
You know what I find not ironic, because with Dark Sermon, you guys did do a lot of touring and did do some bigger bills with some deathcore bands, but not that many bands that were like precisely your guys' style. And I kind of find it ironic because I was going through what you guys have done with Prison. You guys have done a lot of super fucking deathcore tours with Prison, which is like a whole other genre weird for you guys. It's crazy to see.
Yeah, when I look, it's funny, like, yeah, I guess now that I look at the laminates,
the Suicide Silence like 10-year, that was like your guys' first big tour, right? Like with Prison.
Yeah, which is funny because we were so clearly not a deathcore band. Even from our first EP, like you listen to it and you're like, this band is on tour with Suicide Silence. And now that I look at our tour history, I'm like, what the heck? There's like a cyber goth band. There's like an old alternative metal, new metal band. There's Slaughter to Prevail, Oceano, Carnifex. It's like, dude, what type of band are you?
Yeah.
And when you see what we're doing next year, you're going to be like, okay, what type of band are you? Like, it's going to be weird. Yeah.
No, for sure. But I think certain bands fall into this sort of category that fit better for multiple styles of bills, and I do believe Prison falls within that sort of category. I think certain like super deathcore bands don't necessarily aren't necessarily as versatile in the style of touring and other styles of bands they can do, kind of sometimes get pigeonholed into just being able to do deathcore tours. But I know with Prison, you guys, it was somewhat intentional, right, on your guys' part to play with bands that are outside of your style. It would make sense, at least in my mind, but I'd love to hear from you.
If you could see the tours that we submitted for, I mean, I was trying to tour with Tech Nine and Demi Lovato and like just everybody. I'm like, I'm submitting tour because my dream is to be a gateway metal band. Like, think of us when we're growing up. It was Slipknot, Korn, System of a Down, Linkin Park. Like, these were the bands that showed us what metal was. Disturbed. Like, some of these bands are the first scream we ever heard, the first blast beat we ever heard, the first like high distortion guitar riff or down-tuned guitar riff we ever heard, the first breakdown we ever heard. And my dream is that Prison can be that for the next generation of future metal listeners. And in order to do that, we have to tour with bands that don't sound like us to
You're not initiating anyone if you're playing to an audience that already knows the style, right?
So it's been really intentional on our part, where if we do a really heavy tour, we want to turn around and do a tour that's very different from that, and then turn around and do a tour that's different from that. Now, this makes it harder to tour because we have to turn down stuff that we think is cool because it doesn't match.
You guys would technically be the perfect fit for, but
I just had a call with our manager on the way here about how we have to turn down an opportunity that is cool with a band that we like, that is bigger than us and would make us look really good to align ourselves with, but it doesn't support our mission as a band, like what we're trying to do in the music scene. And it's tough to adhere. It's tough to maintain that integrity of like what you set out to accomplish when everybody knows, like, I grew up listening. I'm wearing an Acacia Strain shirt right now. Like, I grew up listening to this heavy stuff. So I want to do those tours, but for every tour like that we do, I want to do a weird one to help reach people who aren't familiar yet.
I mean, at least you guys are still doing both. It's not like you're just saying like, okay, we're just going to do the weird tours and we're going to, because that would also be kind of neglecting the fan base that you do end up having, and also being exposed to new fans that inherently already enjoy the genre, right? I think it's probably easier to get a new fan from a like another fan base that already enjoys breakdowns, right? But
that's the price you pay for trying to branch out into those artists. Like, I remember when we were touring with, let's see, I'll pick. So, for example, Combi Christ and Wednesday 13.
Yeah. That's the one that sticks out the most, I think, right? Yeah.
And on that tour, we had people come up to our merch table and say, I'm not making this up. We had someone come up to the merch table and say, what are some other hard edge bands like you guys that I might like? And I was like, what's hard edge? And they're like, well, what do you call your genre?
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like they literally don't even know what to call us. This is great. And I was like, okay, you got to check out The Last 10 Seconds of Life. You got to check out Extortionist. You got to check out, and I just started I Am is another awesome band. I was like giving them all these bands, and they're like, ooh, I'm going to go home and check these out. And I'm like, this is my dream. But dude, for every one of those kids who comes up and is interested, there's another one that's like, what is with the screaming and the down-tuned guitars? So you really have to work to win over audiences like that in a way that you don't if we're on tour with like Chelsea Grin or Knock Loose or something, where those listeners actually already like that music. It's much easier for us to sell merchandise and convert fans.
Right.
But it's a different type of
You're also competing too, though, right? If we're talking merch and stuff like that. Yeah. It's I think and this is one of the things I'm gonna glaze you for a little bit. Let me indulge. You were a really big part. Like the second that I played those shows with you guys, The band in general, but you particularly, I guess me being a frontman as well, the way you guys played your show and the performances that you guys put on really set something off in my brain. I, at that point, had seen a crazy amount of music and a crazy amount of bands already, heavy and non-heavy, like a whole bunch of different genres. But there was something about Dark Sermon. There was something about you as a frontman, which is what I kind of wanted to get into, which kind of ties into standing out. Right, standing out from the crowd. I think it's one thing to say you're playing with bands in a similar genre or maybe in another genre, but I do think that what kind of transcends that for me is the stage presence that you guys have always had. I mean, I think back to, it was a lot simpler when I first saw you guys in Dark Sermon, when it was still In Tongues wasn't out yet, right? And it was more so, there was a vibe, like you guys. The simple stuff, like the rest of the band would all face towards the amps between songs, and it was just kind of you interacting with the crowd. That's like a thing you guys did, but even just simple things like that were inspirational to me, and I think I can speak for the rest of Depths. You know, we took those performances. You guys, as much as it was super theatrical and you were very interactive with the crowd, it wasn't super long between songs. Like, it was a very short, in your face kind of set. And ever since seeing that, I've strived to do that. Like my favorite sets, because obviously you end up in a place where maybe you're playing 45 minutes. It's not going to be the same story, but like my ideal set has always been, since seeing you guys, not barely talking between songs, and like just doing a 25-minute balls to the wall set. And like, if there is like moments between songs, it's kind of just like noise or whatever's going on in the back, and we're all kind of doing our own thing, not even talking or looking at the crowd or whatever. And with like I said, that was a simpler time, I think, for Dark Sermon. You guys obviously went a lot more theatrical as the time went on with the future albums and stuff. And just to paint a picture for people here listening, you had like incense and like a whole like setup on stage and articles of clothing and stuff. And it was very performative. There was I don't think performative is the right word. That's not that's my French. It was a performance, right? It was very theatrical, I think is the way I could put it. So I think when it comes to all that to say, like, I think when it comes to standing out, even if you're playing with, let's say, I don't know, I don't want to, it's not to compare anyone, but let's say you're touring with Suicide Silence. Well, they're going to play a set. It's going to be great. It's going to be good, but it's just going to be them playing, right? And I think I'm singling out Suicide Silence, but I think that's how it is for most bands, like 99% of bands. And I think you guys have always done that different. And then that's translated into Prison as well. You do your own thing with that as well. I've always found that super fucking cool. I don't know if there's much of like, I'm assuming there's some sort of thought process throughout all of that. I'm assuming there's some part of it that's wanting to stand out, but I'm assuming there's something maybe more, I don't know, core to you as like a person, or I don't know. If you could kind of talk about that, I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts.
Yeah, two things come to mind. The first is I always dream that every time I take the stage, that everyone in the room literally remembers that night as the best concert they've ever been to.
That's like, a hard sell.
But every night, dude, every city, when I take the stage, I'm like, I want these people to look back on tonight in 10, 15 years and say, actually, the best live band I've ever seen was Prison. Mm-hmm. If you're talking best live performance, most fun I've ever had at a concert, it was Prison. And I go into every performance with that intention. I did that in Dark Sermon as well. So part of it is I want these people to have a night that changes them. I want them to be different as a result. I want something to change in their lives. I want this to stick out and be monumental for them. But the other side is, so that's the part that I want for them. And I think when I'm on stage, I think about the audience. I'm not thinking
Yeah.
about myself. I'm not thinking about what's going on in my life. I'm thinking, how can I make sure that from the most comfortable person who's been to a million shows to the least comfortable person, this is their first concert ever, they're there by themselves, they don't know anybody. How can I make sure that everybody in the room has the time of their life? But there is a there's a selfish component, which is there's no freaking way that I gave up 15 years of my life and drove 3,000 miles to give 80% on stage. There's no way. There's no way that I would waste all of the time and energy I've dedicated to this to then go half as hard as I could go on stage, or to give almost all of myself on stage. No way. Like, I've given way too much to phone in a performance. And as a fan, I've gone to see bands that I loved, and they were so extraordinarily disappointing live. And it's because I could tell that, especially vocalists, I think vocalists are maybe the most frequent sinners in this category.
I think it's clearly more obvious on their part. They're the ones actually interacting. The rest of the band can kind of face the other way if they want. No one's going to notice, but it's inherently more obvious when the singer's not feeling it, for sure.
Dude, it's not only something that I think I owe the audience, but it's something that I think I owe to myself.
Yeah. I think there's something to be said, though, that I'd argue your 100% is maybe other people's 80%. You know, like, in the sense that even I think a lot of people have that mentality, right? Like, I do think a lot of bands, obviously not everyone, we've like you said, we've all seen bands maybe give their 25%. Like, we can accept that, but I think a lot of people strive to always do their 100% and give it their all. But I don't think giving their all is necessarily an equal across the board. I think some bands still, at the end of the day, will, I don't know, it's kind of, it even can come just down to what the production looks like on a tour. And obviously that depends on a whole bunch of different things. It can be money at the end of the day, the size of the shows. Like, obviously it's a different story if it's like in front of like a venue that holds 40 people. You're not going to have the same kind of production because you can't. But there's still, obviously, you guys have always found a way. I know, but still, I think a lot of bands kind of stop at just doing the performance and giving their 100% to the performance, but it kind of stops at playing music, and there's not much else that's added to the vibe or the theatrics of it, or anything else that would make them stand out, or I don't know, kind of to win over a crowd or differentiate themselves.
I think also this is something that makes metal really unique. And listen, I love rock. I love rap. I love acoustic and indie and folk stuff. I mean, I listen to a lot of music. The reason why I love metal shows, like, I just went to see Tara Reid and Fat Nick and Puya, like that whole tour, the All But Six tour came through Florida. And I really want to do a rap tour because, and this is nothing against any of these artists, but rap, almost all the rap shows I've been to have generally a lower energy, doesn't have that same live energy as a metal show, but you have all these people in the audience that want that energy.
They want it. Yeah.
You have rap fans in the audience that are looking for any reason to jump and push pit and climb on top of people.
They're just not getting it. Yeah.
They're hungry for that. But if you look at the stage, and I'm, again, not calling out these artists in particular, I'm saying in general, it's really tough to have that type of energy when you don't have a live drummer on stage, you don't have a live bassist on stage, you don't have that wall of sound and the energy of having 5 people slam together. Like, it's visceral, and rap is at a general disadvantage. Just like I think indie is at a general disadvantage, these other genres. metal has something special, and that's why it kills me to see a metal band give 80%, because I'm like, dude, we're almost the only ones that can foster this type of environment live. Like, take advantage of the fact that you have beasts on stage playing extraordinary instruments through giant guitar and bass cabs that were made to shake a room. Like, crush it right now. Don't phone this in, crush it, because other artists don't have that, so they can't pull that off.
Right. They don't even have the opportunity to, even if they wanted, I guess. I think, dude, I think Prison on a rap tour would go crazy. I don't think it's like that crazy of a switch up. Like, yeah, obviously it's way different, but I think it would fit in the vein of what I was saying earlier, where I really do think Prison particularly fits well with a bunch of different genres. There's certain genres of music or certain bands that kind of have that to them. They're just more, I don't want to say accessible, but they're easier to pair. It's more of because you guys do have, I guess, a ton of influences within the band, right? Like, and especially at this point, I'm assuming too, like your music's changed a bit, I guess, throughout the years as well. Dude, I fucking love the new EP, by the way. Energy.
Thank you,
is amazing. It is so good. It's one of those things, like, maybe to someone who knows Prison, maybe it's a bit weird or slightly off-putting if you first put it on for 15 seconds, but it immediately makes sense. Like, I feel like it's a switch up in style, but it's still the same roots. You can still hear it, and it feels very authentic. I don't know how else to put it, but I just wanted to tell you, it's such a fun listen to. It's really fucking good.
I appreciate that a ton. And something that's always been really important to us is the authenticity piece, like keeping true to who we know Prison is. And where we have a disconnect is some of our OG fans are like, put out music like the Hurt EP, which is like, you can't even find it online, like early Prison stuff.
Yeah.
And we say, what is authentic about trying to write a record that I wrote when I was 21, when I'm 31? That's fake. You want us to fake this like real, raw, authentic sound? That would be robbing you guys of what you deserve. So instead, what we're going to do is write what I talked to Cooper about, my guitarist, when we were writing during the pandemic. We asked ourselves, what would Prison sound like if we weren't concerned with what people thought Prison should sound like?
Sure. Okay.
And that's where all of this new music came from, was like this more catchy, more melodic, much more mature songwriting. But still, if you listen to the verses in Energy, it is like super down-tuned chugs, like classic Prison, like super beefy. Out of My Head, the first riff, dun, 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 dun,
100%.
super heavy. And if you listen,
I think it's on the last song. There's like a pretty massive breakdown at the end too, and it's screaming, and it's all those things still, right? You guys still incorporate those core elements of Prison. It doesn't sound like a whole other band all of a sudden, despite having a whole bunch of new elements added to it. At least I don't think.
The way we think about it is, this is who Prison was always going to become. Like when we were 21, the only reason we didn't write this music was because we didn't know how. Yeah. We literally, our brains weren't finished forming, because that, for anyone curious, that happens when you're 25, 26 years old. So we literally couldn't write this music, even though we wanted to. It was inside of us. So we look at this record as a very true reflection of who Prison has always been meant to become. And who knows, the next record will be what that record's supposed to be like. Each record is going to be reflective of who we are at the time, because if we try to recreate something that happened in the past, we're lying to fans, which is a total misuse of a platform, and we are robbing ourselves of one of the only things that artists get to keep throughout their entire career, which is their artistic integrity.
And you got to play those songs live afterwards. It's not like it's not like one of those things. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna write this for the fans and then that's it. No, they're gonna want to see it live too. You're gonna actually have to be invested in this. It's not like it's not a throwaway thing, you know. And it's lots of money. It's a lot of time. It's like it's all these things, you know. And yeah, I think I think it's cool. Who did you guys record with? Is it all Cooper? Not Cooper, but Austin.
Yeah. So Austin and I. So I call him Cooper. His name is Austin Coop.
Sure.
So
okay.
we met when I was playing for Dark Sermon and he was playing for Adalia. So that was another band from Florida. We played tons of shows together coming up. Even like, I mean, we were teenagers, like pimples and braces. Like I'm talking young. And both Adalia and Dark Sermon broke up around the same time.
Kind of at the same time, right? Yeah.
And we had already started writing for Prison just as a side project. So when Dark Sermon tracked The Oracle, which was our second record on E1, we tracked with this guy, Kenny Gill, who was a local producer, and Austin
So like
Coop,
Pig Pen or something like that? Some sort of studio night? Yeah.
And then Austin Coop was working, he was kind of interning at that studio at the time.
Yeah.
And so when we were working on early Prison, we were writing like literally between Dark Sermon sessions or Adalia sessions. We'd work on some Prison demos. And then eventually when we tracked NGRI, we put out an EP in 2017 and we did all of that, just me and Cooper. And then when we did Still Live, we did all of that, just me and Cooper. And then when we did Energy, we did all of that, just me and Cooper. And we're like, holy crap. Like, I mean, I can't sing his praises more highly. He is, if you gave me a choice of any producer to work with in an unlimited budget, I'd choose him. He's been doing
in the past like year or two, dude, the things that I've seen him come up with have been so fucking cool and sounds so great.
He's a beast,
and it's all over the place. It's like a lot of producers usually kind of get holed up into like a particular style. They got like they get like a niche that other bands. It's kind of like the first kind of bigger band that works. That you get recognized for. You only get gigs for people who want to sound like that. It's kind of like a weird thing, but dude, he's because he worked on the recent Psycho Frame, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's been putting out a bunch of stuff. But dude, okay, there's something about the Florida scene. We have to talk about this because Florida right now, I feel, is criminally underrated with the amount of heavy bands that are coming out of Florida right now. What's with Florida? What's going on?
So Florida is, so last night I was at Cattle Decapitation in Tampa. Yeah. And the first thing he says between songs is the death metal capital of the United States, which is right. That's true. And arguable.
You guys are stealing it from us, you motherfuckers.
I was just about to say, there are so many people in other cities that have a very well-founded claim to that title. But Tampa...
Oh, we've lost it, dude. We've lost it. All of our fame is of the past. I'm totally willing to accept that. Still a lot of fans and stuff, but I can admit that places like Florida or even like Southern California have, in my mind, more of an active band scene, I guess, than what we have here.
It's in Florida. I think what you have is a scene that goes through ebbs and flows, because sometimes shows down here, like you can ask any touring band, they've played the worst show of their tour in Central Florida. And then 5 tours later, the best show of their whole tour was in Central Florida. And I can't explain exactly why it's like this. It's been like this the whole, I've lived here for 3 decades.
I can tell you.
So I've seen it.
I have a theory on this.
Is it fluoride in the water?
No.
What is it?
I just think it's oversaturated. It's kind of as simple as that. Like it's one of those things. Like if I take Montreal for example, like you have X amount of money and X amount of time to go out to shows. I have to choose between the 30 different metal shows that are happening this month. So at the end of the day, I think the smaller bands, like really local shows, don't get too much shit because it's like there's a bit more pride in the DIY scene and helping out your friends and going out to the people you know. So that's not too much of an issue. The really big shows don't have an issue, but everything in between is kind of like hit or miss. If there's nothing else going on that week, cool. But if not, there might be 5 other shows that same night. And it's just one of those things, I think.
Yeah, the same is true for rap. Like a lot of the popular rappers right now are from Florida. Like we really have a strong, but what's interesting is we don't always have a strong scene, but we have strong artists.
Yeah.
And then how strong the scene is goes like this.
Yeah. So I think to contrast that, I think Montreal kind of always has like a good scene, but it's just, it can only get spread out so much. How's it been, I guess, like everything I've been seeing music wise, shows, tours since the pandemic is like real good though. I don't know how it is in Florida, but dude, I'm seeing tour flyers fully sold out left and right. It's almost like if you're not selling out your tour, you're doing something wrong at this point. It's like, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that's been really interesting to watch because these bands that before the pandemic couldn't sell 200 tickets are now selling 500 tickets, 600 tickets, and they're not any bigger. I'm not talking about bands that used to be small and are now big because that's separate. That makes sense. I'm talking bands that were just as big then as they are now. And I was texting in the group chat about it yesterday with the Prison guys, and Truck, our drummer, said that he thinks that it's in part because tour packages are stronger now. Because before you might have strong headliner, maybe a strong headliner, strong co-headliner, maybe a strong direct support, and then like 3 throwaway bands that well, they needed an opportunity. And keep in mind, I've been the throwaway band. Like Dark Sermon was not a huge artist, so we got lucky on some of those bills. But I do think that makes sense because you're seeing these tours be announced, and it's like, wait, Oceano is opening the tour? Like they could go headline their own tour. That's really impressive. So I think we are seeing more bills where the entire bill from the very first band to the last band is strong. And that makes kids get to shows early, stay to the last band, buy tickets in advance. And I don't think that we've experienced as much of that because we've toured less since COVID. Yeah. So I'm really excited next year to start doing some of those mixed bill tours and see if that holds true in those genres as well.
I think to kind of counter that, though, I think we've been seeing a lot more single genre bills than ever before, ever since I would say like pre 2010. Like there was a time where a multi-genre bill was foreign, like a foreign concept. No one, like people were beating each other up at shows because the crowds couldn't mesh and weren't used to seeing people that don't like the same style of music as them at the same show. And it's dramatically shifted from that. But we've been seeing a lot of like deathcore only tours, like hardcore only tours and stuff like that, which I think is great. I think a healthy mix of both is cool, but I think there's definitely less like mixed bills than they're used to.
Yeah.
How was the pandemic for you guys? Like as a band, I mean, like did you guys, because you guys released music throughout the pandemic, right?
Yeah, we weren't planning on it because we unfortunately put out our 2019 record right before COVID, and we didn't even get to tour on the record. So our timing was not great. However, we put out a live EP in 2020 because our thinking was people can't go to shows right now. What do they want? They want a concert. How can we give them that concert experience? And if anyone listening to this or watching this has not heard the live EP from Prison, go listen to it with your eyes closed I'm telling you, it feels like a concert. It is such a cool experience.
It sounds great too. It's like because live mixing, especially throughout the pandemic, we've gotten examples of horrible, horrible mixes and also great ones. And it's actually a great listen. Like a lot of times, my argument is always like, why would I listen to a live, uncontrolled, lesser than recording if I can listen to the studio version of the same thing? But the prison, actually, it sounds great.
I appreciate it, and you'll never guess who mixed it. It was Cooper. So all credit where credit is due. And then we put out a series of singles because we never knew. We wrote, here's what we did. During COVID, 90% of bands were like, oh, we're going to do a merch drop with a face mask with our logo on it, or we're going to do a live stream of a playthrough or whatever.
Yeah.
All Prison did was write music. We shut off freaking everything. I'm sure if you go back, you can find like month-long stints where we didn't post on social media. We weren't doing anything. All we were doing was getting together. Cooper and I were getting together and writing riffs and putting together songs. And now we have this gigantic body of music where we've only released, 6 new songs since COVID that are all on that Energy EP. However, we have an entire LP that we've also finished that we have not released yet. So we're going to release more music next year. We have this mountain of music because what we thought was
pre-EP, or it's songs you wrote past the songs on the EP, or a mix of both. I'm curious.
Mix.
Okay.
Yeah. So some of the stuff is more aggressive than the EP music. Some of the stuff is more melodic than the EP music. And I think it was kind of our coping mechanism because the two things that I like, maybe the only two things that I like about being in a band are writing music and playing shows. Yeah. And because we could not play shows, all we had was writing. So we're like, I don't want to live stream a performance in my friend's garage. I don't want to do a merch drop. Like all I want to do is make music. And if I can't go perform, I want to write.
Yeah. So you guys held on to a lot of music before finally putting out Energy. You guys waited out for the pandemic to start really releasing stuff.
Yeah, we put out our first new single at the end of 2020. I think we put out one more single at the end of that year. And then we released a couple in 2021, maybe one.
Okay, still, you guys were still putting out music then. Yeah.
So we were.
Because I think the mistake for people is not putting out music at all. Because you guys could have been kind of the mentality to wait out the pandemic and to finally tour that album you guys put out before, right? And I think a lot of bands were really kind of doing that, Yeah, it's kind of crazy because then you come back to playing shows and you're like. At the same time, like people know the songs now. I personally hate those first shows and that first period where no one actually knows the album, but those are the songs you want to play. Yeah. That's like always to me an awkward period anyways, but still it's kind of fucked up to think about. Like you've for like a couple years you didn't perform the songs that you guys had actually put out. We
basically lost an album cycle. And a lot of bands, I'm going to be real, a lot of bands including us talked about quitting. Like we had no idea if or when live music would ever be back. We had no idea if tours would ever be back. And you got to keep in mind, like all of us are real people. Like one of our members has kids, this is real life happens. And we just had to be like, do we still want to do this? And now that we have so much new music that we want to put out, we're just like, it sucks that we never got to tour on Still Alive, but we also know that if we've played maybe like 40 shows since the pandemic or something, 50 shows max. I'm talking probably still less than that even. And
that would still be a decent amount though.
Yeah, but we used to play
touring
a couple hundred shows a year. So I think part of us is hoping that what we really care about is that our music that we released during that time doesn't get lost in the mix. Like if you think about, Energy, our new EP, which is some of these singles that we had released plus some new music already has more streams as a release than Still Alive.
Oh, no way. Okay.
And that's tough because we love Still Alive. We put so much work into Still Alive. So we're kind of praying that while we really want people to listen to the new music, we pray that the music that we released for Still Alive that was in that lost album cycle, we just pray that people don't miss it, you know?
Right. Well, look, I think bands are very hesitant to do anything outside of the box, but like you guys could throw out a new music video for a song on Still Alive. You know, like there's no reason to not. No, but I mean, you could potentially bring a song back and maybe that reels people. Oh, what album is that from? Oh shit, music I haven't heard from Prison. I don't know. I think there are ways of thinking outside the box that obviously if you guys are playing some of the songs live and stuff like that, but I think there are ways to think outside the box to try and get that a bit more to the forefront than just, you know, losing out on the whole cycle. What's crazy to me is like, sure. I mean, obviously there's life and stuff like I wasn't in the band anymore, but Deps disbanded throughout COVID. That's what ultimately ended up happening. I changed careers during COVID, you know, like, you know, and I think that was real for a lot of people. Especially, I wasn't doing music anymore at that time, but for people that were somewhat relying on money or income coming in from music, everything shutting down. Well, a lot of people like had to go get jobs, you know, stuff that. So that's like, you know, it's kind of crazy in itself, but I don't know, man. It was a crazy time, man. I'm glad we're on the other side to say the least. I want to, just because I want to be wary of your time, I want to at least get into Cope Notes, at least for a little bit, if that's okay with you.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so I could sit here and try to explain it to people, but I think you've probably got the better one-line pitch for what Cope Notes is. If you want to just explain real quick what Cope Notes is, which you founded, and then we can get into some more specifics. I've got some questions about that.
Yeah, just a very high level. What Cope Notes does is we send randomly timed text messages that interrupt negative thought patterns and train the brain to think healthier thoughts.
Yeah.
That's in a sentence what we do. It's pretty fascinating stuff, but basically you read some text messages, you feel better. So it's proven to reduce stress, anxiety, depression, totally anonymous, and only takes just a little bit of time here and there to use.
I think what I found interesting about Cope Notes when I first was looking into it, I guess is more so also the pattern breaking that it would create, because I think on a surface level explained how you just did, like there's like obviously value to in the moment getting something like a text that, you know, either has something like kind of a pick me up or a trick or you know, something to get you through the day or to make you think differently and stuff like that. But I think the habit over time to really kind of rewire your perspective is something that I definitely think goes unnoticed for a lot of people. Like it's sometimes some really small thing, something as simple as getting a text message every single day can really more drastically change your outlook on life, you know, versus just the in the moment information that you're getting.
The way I've described it before is think about vegetables. So who's healthier? Is it the person who eats 1/2 cup of green beans every night with dinner, or the person who eats no vegetables for 30 days, and then on the first day of the next month, that person eats 16 pounds of green beans? So that's what we do with wellness. We say, well, I'll worry about it later, worry about it later, worry about it later. And we go really long periods of time without doing anything to improve our mental and emotional health. And then we have this sort of panic mode where we're like, okay, I need to just info dump on my friend, or I'm just going to drink a whole case of beer by myself or whatever. And we try to
at the bottom of the barrel, like,
yeah. So I'm a big believer in a little step every day makes a massive difference over the course of time. And fortunately, that's backed by science.
Yeah, for sure. It's, I mean, how I'm curious because we never actually. I mean, we talked about Cope Notes briefly when I last saw you. I guess I last saw you pre-pandemic. I think it was right. Oh, I think it was like a day or two before I was leaving for my road trip with my
That's right.
with my wife. I was fortunate you played like down the street for me. I was like, yeah, I've got a shit ton of stuff to do, but like I can't not go. Like
I love it.
It was literally like a 5-minute walk from my place. I was like, that would be stupid. But yeah, I mean, I don't remember really talking about what made you initially come up, I guess, with the idea or the want to do something like Cope Notes, because I obviously I think we see a lot of musicians kind of transfer their skills from music to music, in the sense that we'll see a lot of people, they'll either get into production, they'll start printing merch, they'll do graphic design, all things that are kind of adjacent to things they've already done before in music. And I don't think many musicians at all go into completely different ventures. And then obviously it's kind of a bigger step out into the unknown. And I look at something like Cope Notes, and like clearly it's a potentially really fucking big endeavor. Like there's a lot to think about from a legality standpoint, from even from an ideation standpoint. Like, did you have an idea? If you can kind of tell me what made you, I guess, try to go into pursuing doing Cope Notes and how it kind of happened.
Yeah, it's funny because my friends from music think that Cope Notes is a hobby. And then my friends that I've met through Cope Notes think that my music stuff is a hobby. Like they don't have any, like people don't understand. Cope Notes is bigger now than prison could ever be. It's hard to put it into perspective. Like we contract with like some of the largest companies in the world, like health insurance companies, hospital systems, school districts. I mean, this is like, talk about pressure, dude. Walking out on a festival stage is nothing compared to like providing daily mental health support for teenagers who are in public schools, knowing that their parents are going to have some kind of issue with, oh, you said what to my child and what gave you the right. I mean, this is, an extraordinary responsibility. Dude. So I didn't, to be clear, I didn't want to start a company. I didn't want to do anything besides music. So what actually happened was people would ask me so anyone listening who doesn't know this, I'm shocked that you don't know this by now. If you've listened to any of our music, you probably know, but I grew up with severe mental illness and I didn't want to hear about any type of thing that would help me. So I didn't want to hear about therapy or medication or yoga or meditation or journaling. I was like, bleh, I don't want to hear about any of it. Get that out of my face. I'm a tough death metal guy. I'm a bodybuilder. Like I'm going to power through this. And then as I started getting healthier and people would notice, I would be in a city on tour and they'd say, yeah, you seem different. Like you seem lighter and healthier. Like what's working? And I would tell them, well, it's therapy and medication and journaling. And like I'd tell them all the stuff that I didn't want to hear. And they would say, ew, no, ugh, I don't want to do any of that stuff. And I'm like, I
you
know.
saw yourself in them, right?
I know. That's what I said. And I wanted to create something that could help those people who didn't want to use the other resources, either because they didn't have time or money or didn't feel comfortable. So in a weird way, I created something that I would have needed. And I had no plan to. Originally, it was a nonprofit. Originally, it wasn't even incorporated. And then it was a nonprofit. And then I had to make it a for-profit because nobody was paying us any freaking money because it was free. And I couldn't find enough volunteers to run it. So I made it into a company, and I didn't take a paycheck for 4 years, working full-time for 4 years with no paycheck building this thing. And now we have like a full-time staff. It's my full-time job. So it's definitely grown to be something that I didn't trust me when I say I had no idea what I was getting myself
Right.
into. And I certainly didn't I think COVID was an inflection point because before music was my full time and Cope Notes was my part time.
Yeah.
And then
It flipped during the pandemic.
when I couldn't tour, and now Cope Notes got so much bigger than I ever thought that now it's difficult to reincorporate music back into that ecosystem.
Yeah. Oh no, it must be. How big is the staff right now? Do you know offhand?
So here's the best part. Cope Notes only has 6 full-time employees.
Okay.
We are serving tens of thousands of people every day. Yeah. So I am a big believer in small but mighty teams. I don't want to have a huge office building and have hundreds of employees or go public. That's not, dude, my dream was to make something that helps people feel better. That's it. Yeah. That's my life mission. Make stuff that helps people feel better. So I'm passionate about keeping our team small and serving the largest amount of people possible with that team. And fortunately, it's something that you can do in technology that you can't do if this was like a cupcake shop,
a service in person kind of thing. Yeah. What is that? This is inside baseball at this point, but I'm curious. I'm assuming from I don't know what you would call it, a CEO, top of the organization, figurehead and person actually putting in the work. I'm assuming when it comes to music afterwards, having a small team probably doesn't help that, right? Or do you have systems in place? I'm just curious how that works or what your plans are with that. Like, I mean, because if you want to leave for tour for 2 months, are you working full time on the road still? Are you taking, I'm assuming it's going to still survive while you're on tour, right? Like but having a small team, I can imagine, is different than if you had a bigger team and more people to cover some bases, I guess. But there's like certain things, I guess, like someone at the top is necessary for. I don't know. Some people put themselves in a position where they don't have to be. I'm just curious how that is for you.
Yeah, I work full time on Cope Notes even when I'm on tour.
Okay.
But you got to think, we have an operator who actually runs the business and is everyone's boss, basically. I'm her boss. And then she has 2 software engineers that are working on the product full time. We have an account executive who's like out there working with prospective partners. We have an account manager, like a customer experience manager, who's working with our existing clients. So it's not like if I take my hand off the wheel, the bus crashes. But I care so much about it that I don't think I would want to take my hand off the wheel for too long. Like, I'm really passionate about what we do. But the other thing is, on tour, I was working remotely on tour before for other people. I'd work in the van on my laptop. I'd get to the venue, use some Wi-Fi. Like, people don't understand that if you have a job remotely, you can work if you're diligent, because some people slack off. But if you really actually want to do it, you could work full-time remote on tour, because by the time you wrap up your workday, it's 4 or 5 o'clock, doors open at 6. So if you really wanted to do it, you could do it. And I think most people don't have work that they care enough about to actually dedicate that time to, because it is exhausting. If you don't care that much about it, you'll burn yourself out.
Right. Especially like doing both, especially like, I mean, my career change was mostly motivated by the fact that I'd do it on a computer and I could do it anywhere I want. That was always the goal. Then the pandemic hit, so that was, there was no, would work from home anyways. And I haven't gone out back on tour, but I'm kind of eager to go back. I wouldn't want to do music again on the road, just because that's like a whole other commitment. There's everything else that comes along with it, but like photos and stuff like that, I've always kind of seen myself. That was the goal, kind of like when I initially quit the band. I was like, I'll just go back out when I want, choose my gigs, and not be like dependent. Like last tour we were I did, we were already talking about potentially another tour in a month, and I was like, I can't. I'm out. I can't do this, right? Whereas like a photo gig, you know, I can say no. It's chill. They're not like dependent on that. But that's cool, man. How was I'm curious, the TED Talk? How was that experience?
Okay, very intimidating. So it's funny that you said that in Dark Sermon, I, you know, hardly talking to the audience. In prison, they have to shut me up. They have to be like, Johnny, stop talking so we can play another song. But I had been a public speaker, like speaking at conferences and events and stuff for a long time, like well over a decade. And I'd always wanted to give a TED Talk. But what makes TED Talks challenging and intimidating, there's a few things that people don't know. Like, I didn't know this stuff before I gave one. I've given two now. So I have the experience to know that this is a different type of thing. So here were a few things that really surprised me about giving a TED Talk. Number one, for my first one, they assigned me a coach, and I worked with the coach for 6 months to write this talk. And I must have made 20 or 30 different revisions of my talk over the course. I mean, dude, I can't count how many hours. I mean, it's like having a 6-month-long part-time job. Now, not everybody puts that much work into it, but it was so important for me. I'm like, if I nail this, it's going to lead to so many other speaking opportunities. And I'm so passionate about doing that work. And so one thing that shocked me was how much freaking work it took. I had no idea the commitment. Number two,
well, you're prepping a talk from zero, right? It's not the same as people who regularly do talks, kind of redoing the same subject over again, right? The hard part is building it up.
Yeah, the second thing that really surprised me was people asked me how I got it. I just applied. Did you know that you can apply to give a TED? I didn't even know that. You can apply. So I just submitted an application like it was for a job or something. So anybody can go submit an application, which I was like, holy crap. I thought you had to be invited or something. Not true. But then the other thing that really kind of shook me was, at least at the first event, they were very strict about, you have to adhere to your script that has been approved by TED, by the organizers.
Right.
And if you deviate from the script, TED reserves the right to not upload your talk, which means that you could have done 6 months worth of work. And then on stage, if you forget your next line or something and you kind of flub and you improvise a little bit, they could not upload that talk. And keep in mind, a TED Talk lives forever. Like, you Google me for the rest of my life, that's going to be on the first page of Google. And I felt so much pressure to get it right, but I was also so nervous because I'm like, not only do I want this video to be perfect because it's going to live longer than I will, but I have to nail this script, because if I mess it up, they might not even upload the video and then it was for nothing. So here's what I did. I have memory loss from taking, I used to take an antipsychotic medication for about 11 years. And one of the long-term side effects of taking very heavy medication was pretty severe memory loss. So I told the organizers, you want me to memorize an 18-minute script word for word? I have memory loss.
Not gonna happen,
Can you give me a teleprompter, or can I speak from an outline with bullet points and kind of improvise between the points? And they were like, no. So here's what I did.
No way. No prompter allowed?
Oh, no. No, everybody given a TED Talk memorized every single freaking word. So here's what I did.
Oh, man.
I would, and I'm not exaggerating, I did this for about 2 hours a day for about 6 months. And I'm just talking about this part of my process. I would work on my outline of my talk and work on the actual words, like the sentences. Yeah. And I'm not including that in the 2 hours. So after I would work on it, I would then, the first hour is reading through out loud and recording it on my phone, reading through my script and timing myself. and working on my inflection, how I wanted certain sentences to sound. Then I would go to the gym and listen to the talk on repeat like a song. And I would hear parts that I wanted to change or edit, and I would make a list. And I practiced for an hour, then I would listen to it for an hour and make a list of notes. The next morning, I would integrate all of my edits into the document. Then I would record it for an hour. Then I'd listen for an hour for 6 months, dude.
And then you change the script
over and over again. you change the script every single day.
Yeah.
So at the end, I was literally listening to my final talk that was approved. I was listening to it while I'm doing dishes, while I'm in the shower, while I'm driving, trying to memorize it like a song.
Yeah. I had to learn once a set for a band. And it was the biggest struggle I've ever had. And this is like musical, music gets stuck in your head. You can at least kind of like, if I don't know the words, I kind of at least know like how it goes or how it's sung or whatever, stuff like that. So I can't imagine like just a straight up text, no backing music, dead air, like just you, just you in silence, man. Fuck.
Dude, it was
I commend you
worth
for
it,
that.
though.
I doubt I'd have the strong enough mind to plow through, like to power through something like that.
I mean, it's the way I looked at it was this is a once in a lifetime experience, which is funny because then they invited me to give a second one. So I didn't apply for the second time. And that talk took me 2 months to write because I had already been through it all before. I was like, dude, I'm better at this. But let me tell you, if they asked me to give a third one, I'd probably say no because it's so much work. And dude, you don't get paid. Like they don't compensate you.
Yeah.
You do it just to say you have done it. And it was an extraordinary experience. I wouldn't trade it. But dude, for the amount of work that you have to put in, unless you plan to be like a career public speaker, which is still, I mean, that's been my primary source of income for a really long time, is being a professional speaker. So unless you plan on actually doing that for your career, I'd be like, man, I'm not sure if it's worth your time. If it's a dream, a dream of yours to give one, give it. But if you're going to be 3 months into that 6 month writing process and go, ugh, what a waste of my time. No. Like I feel for you, bro. It is hard.
Yeah, no, for sure. Oh, dude, that's insane. I figured it'd be like a lot of work regardless, but did they have a lot of, because you said it had to be approved. Were they kind of specific about things you could and couldn't say, or was it just to generally get like an okay?
So to be clear, other people who have given TED Talks might have had different experiences because they're all organized by different like chapters
different
of
people,
TED.
Right? Yeah.
So for example, the organizers at my first one were significantly more strict than the organizers at my second one. I'm really glad I did the strict one first because they taught me like what it means to give a talk, like what makes a good talk. And they really challenged me and pushed back on parts of my script. Like, I don't think you should say this like this. I think you can reword this. I think you can take this whole section out. So they really helped me adhere to strict guidelines. And I'm thankful for that because the talk probably would have been worse if they weren't so critical. I mean, it's the same with you in a studio. You do a vocal take and the producer's like, Dom, you can do better than that. And you're like, I nailed that. What are you talking about? And they're like, go back in, do it again. Because they hear something that you don't.
Honestly, I think it might be the opposite for me, but I get what you mean. I'm in the studio. I'm kind of in my head, so I'm almost kind of looking for the validation more than seeking it out for myself. I'm rarely turbo. I mean, it got better with time. The more albums I did, the more you get used to it. But dude, I think the second album I did, I think I've never hated a process so much in my life. Like hearing yourself back and not You know, it's kind of raw. You're like listening to it solo. It's like there's something about vocals, especially that's like it's so contextual for a lot of the times with like the rest of the music and everything else. You hear it in the mix afterwards, and I'm super fucking stoked. But like during the process, I'm like, oh god, I fucking hate this. Everything sounds like shit. What am I doing?
Yeah, dude. I wish some people could hear their favorite vocalist sound check before Doors. So no reverb on the mic. No, I mean, I wish to God that people could hear some of their favorite vocalists going glur, glur, until we make it sound good. Like, and that's why I feel bad.
Semi warmed up. Yeah,
dude. We try to put forth this like super polished version of ourselves and try to make ourselves seem like we're not human beings. But anyone who has ever toured with anybody knows like. You walk in on some huge artist changing their socks and you're like, oh, you wear socks? And then it's like, of course you wear socks. This is like, we're all people, you know?
Yeah. No, for sure, man. I don't know, man. Do you have anything you'd want to say in terms of, I would love to kind of just cap it off with anything we could talk about a bit more mental health. Is there anything maybe that you have on your mind or things you've maybe noticed or things that you wish you could tackle in terms of mental health, whether it be through Cope Notes or just maybe something you've noticed or I don't know, anything you could share with us in terms of dealing maybe with mental health?
Yeah, one thing that I'm very passionate about is, especially in the metal scene, a lot of people in the metal and hardcore community use drugs and alcohol to help themselves feel better. But drugs and alcohol are proven to exacerbate the symptoms that you're trying to make
to get rid of. Yeah.
So all I would want to encourage anybody listening to do is listen, this is not my opinion. I'm not saying like I think drugs are bad or I think alcohol is a depressant. That's its category. So if you are drinking alcohol because you feel depressed, let me tell you something, buddy. You are making it. It's like saying, I'm so thirsty, I'm going to eat some potato chips. Like it literally makes you thirstier. So my encouragement to anyone listening is whenever I hear people say, oh, there's nothing I can do about it, I think the first thing I ask is, do you drink alcohol? And if they say yes, I'm like, there is something you can do. Because by stopping yourself from turning to alcohol, you are making a positive impact on your mental and emotional health. You're not just saving money. You're not just making better decisions for your physical health. You are actively combating the symptoms that you're struggling with by simply saying, I'm good with water. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people have more power than they think over what they're struggling with. And it's the easiest lever to pull is to say no thanks and wait for that health, the health implications of saying no thanks to compound. I'm telling you, like I said, not my opinion, not something I'm inventing. This is literally, you can Google this stuff. It is proven scientifically. And I love watching people go from thinking there's nothing I can do to realizing there is something I can do. And by simply making this one decision, I'm taking a step towards a healthier version of myself.
Right. I think there's like different levels, obviously, to drinking alcohol and using drugs and stuff. I think it's safe to say that a lot of people will turn to it to cope to various degrees, you know, but obviously it's probably a bit, probably more important, but obviously harder to get someone who's an alcoholic to say no to drinking all of a sudden. You know, that's like an extra thing, but if you're kind of using it more sparingly, it's obviously like a fairly easy change to make, you know, as simple as just kind of thinking it and going forward with it. Right.
I just listened to an interview with a doctor earlier today about this, and he said most people, the big challenge for them is that they think, well, I'm not an alcoholic and therefore I don't need to make a change.
Right.
And that's, first of all, a total fallacy. But second of all, the reason I want to bring it up here is my whole job. I mean, it's called Cope Notes. We are like professional coping mechanism teachers. Like we teach people how to cope with the challenges of life. And when I see people, especially in metal and hardcore, turning to these things, I think like my dream is to see the metal and hardcore community grow and thrive. And like when our generation is where Korn and Slipknot's generation is, like when we are all 50, I want this next crop of people to walk into a thriving, vibrant, healthy community of music that's going to be around for a long time. So in order for that to happen, we have to take really good care of it. And I've seen way too many venues get shut down, or concerts get canceled, or artists passing away, or I mean, I can't count how many things I've seen happen as a result of us turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms. And I think if I still want metal and hardcore to be here 20 years from now, we got to take care of each other.
Oh, for sure. That's awesome, man. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, man. That's super cool. Yeah, I think we're good, man. I would obviously love to keep talking forever. We do have some catching up to do, more than just this talk. I would love to keep talking some other time, if anything. But yeah, I just want to thank you so much for hopping on, man. It was awesome catching up and getting to chat.
Dude, I am grateful. And also anybody who's listening or in the chat or anything, please, I'm going to make you, I'll have two pleases for you. My first ask is, if you're curious about Cope Notes, go to copenotes.com. You can try it for free. If you decide to pay for it, it's $10 a month. So you're talking a full year of it costs less than one therapy session. So it's a lot of bang for buck. But even if you don't want to pay for it, you could go try it for free. It's totally anonymous, so I won't even know that you tried it. I encourage you to give it a spin. But the other thing is, like you mentioned, Prison just put out an EP, just as in a couple weeks ago. I mean, it's like fresh, hot off the press. So if you've either never heard of Prison or you haven't heard our new music, definitely go to Spotify, spin it. We have a music video that we put out a few months back that's really fun. It's a fun watch. So
fun is a good word. Yeah.
And then please keep your fingers crossed for the tours that we hope to do next year, because if we pull it off, man, it's going to be the coolest thing we ever did.
Hell yeah, man. I'm rooting for you guys. For anyone who's here right now, I've got it pinned in the chat if you guys want to check out Cope Notes. We're probably going to listen to some music after we hop off. Check out some Prison, some of the newer stuff. And for anyone watching later, I'll have all of that down in the description. But thank you so much, Johnny. Always a pleasure.
Heck yeah. Thank you for having me, bro.
Of course, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.